All right, man, peace. You know, brother, some of you Terence Crawford fans out there are going to have to come get your boy. He's talking like he's been drinking. Look, I get it. It's the day before the fight. You're hyped up. You're aggressive. You're competitive. You start saying shit that normally you probably would not say on camera. But sometimes you have to be respectful of the past and those who came before you, especially when you have not accomplished anywhere near as much as they accomplished. Why am I saying all this? Because Terence Crawford is sitting down here being interviewed by Max Kellerman. And Max Kellerman is going to ask him where he thinks he ranks in the history of professional boxing when it comes to being a switch hitter, meaning turning your stance from orthodox to southpaw. In other words, when you're an orthodox fighter, you lead with your left foot and your left hand. When you're a southpaw, you lead with your right foot and your right hand. You have certain fighters like a T. Bud Crawford who likes to quote-unquote switch hit, meaning go from one stance to another. Many times they do this because they feel like their lead hand, when it's a strong hand, should be the jab hand. Therefore, your rear hand, which is weaker, can be your rear punching hand, where you could throw left crosses, left hooks, etc. with more power because your hip is more behind it. For example, Oscar De La Hoya, Miguel Cotto are both natural southpaws who decided that they were going to lead with the left hand because that would put the onus on their right hand to be their power hand, and it would add more power to their lead hand, that being their left hook. That's why both of those fighters were known as being great left hookers. In the case of a Terence Crawford, to be honest with you, I don't think that he has that much confidence fighting as an orthodox fighter, because what he does is he likes to feel his opponents out in the orthodox stance and then fight from rounds 3 or 4 onward in the southpaw stance. He does not really switch hit that much per se. But he's going to make a claim that he believes that he's a better switch hitter than Marvin Hagler, which I think is not really necessary because Marvin Hagler has accomplished so much more than Terence Crawford has to this point in his career. Marvin retired in what, 1987? He was 33 years old. Terence Crawford is 33 years old right now. And by the time that Marvin Hagler had retired, he fought a bevy of big names and had a bevy of big fights. And Terence has not had anywhere near the impact in the sport of boxing that Marvin Hagler has had. But you know what, I'm going to expound on that a bit more over the course of the video. Of course, they're going to talk about it. I'm going to chime in.
When people call you like he's the best switch hitter maybe ever, because as has been pointed out, and we were here when Teddy said it, Hagler really fought out of a... we disagree about that. I saw Hagler switch plenty. But he basically fought out of a southpaw stance for the most part, whereas you really switch it up. Is that meaningful to you?
No, T-Bud fights mostly out of a southpaw stance as well, especially once he feels like he has his opponent's timing down.
Are you a guy who just says, oh, next fight, let me beat this guy up, next fight, let me beat this guy up?
I mean, don't get it twisted. He switches, but he fights mostly out of a southpaw stance.
What is your legacy and the way people think of you? Like, you know, 50 years from now, they'll be saying, you know who's the best guy switched up ever? Terence Crawford. Is that meaningful?
I think that's what they say when my career is all done and over.
No, bro. What they're going to say after your career is all done is whether or not you were able to defeat Errol Spence and Sean Porter and Keith Thurman and those type of guys, those big names that everyone wants you to fight. And of course, people are going to say, well, what about the PBC side? At the end of the day, the PBC side is the varsity when it comes to the welterweight division. You can try to shirk it. You can try to avoid it. You can try to circumnavigate it all you want. The PBC side, when it comes to the welterweight division, is the varsity side. And I still do not understand why Terence Crawford, knowing this, decided that he was going to re-sign with Top Rank. Luka Doncic was a great player in the Spanish league over there in Europe. He didn't say, all you great NBA players, come over to the Spanish league so that you can prove to me that you're as good as me. He said, let me take my talents over to the NBA. So Terence Crawford, I believe, is going to regret not signing with the PBC if some of those major fights don't get made, which I think eventually they will get made. That's why I keep trying to harp on this Terence Crawford and Sean Porter fight, because both of those fighters claim that everyone is avoiding them. Both of them claim that they'll fight anybody. Both of them claim that they want the fights that the fans want. So let's start putting more pressure on Crawford and Porter to make their fight happen, because he's not going to fight Errol Spence anytime soon. He can keep letting Errol Spence's name come out of his mouth. That fight is going to happen no time soon. So let's push that to the side and let's start trying to make this Crawford versus Sean Porter fight happen.
They will say Terence Crawford is the best switch hitter. I don't think nobody in the sport of boxing have done what I've done in switching. That's just simple, period. Marvin Hagler, whoever.
Bro, I have news for you. Roy Jones, Floyd Mayweather, Andre Ward, Marvin Hagler, all switch hit, and they've all accomplished a lot more than you. No disrespect. You're an all-time great when it comes to your skill set, but until you get into the ring with those top fighters, I don't want to hear you calling out Mr. Marvin Hagler and letting his name come out of your mouth. Marvin Hagler had more knockouts than you have fights. And like I stated, he was 33 when he retired. You're 33 right now. Marvin Hagler had twice as many knockouts. He had 52 knockouts for his career than Terence Crawford has right now. So let's not start talking about Marvin Hagler. He got in the ring with Roberto Duran, with Tommy Hearns, with Sugar Leonard. I mean, I don't even see a Fulgencio Oba on Terence Bud Crawford's resume. I don't see that. I don't see Tony Simpson on Terence Bud Crawford's resume. I don't see Vito Antuofermo on Terence Bud Crawford's resume. I just don't see it. I don't see the brother from Uganda that Marvin Hagler had that big war with. I don't see that guy on Terence Bud Crawford's resume. So let's not talk about Marvin Hagler. Marvin Hagler is one of the great fighters of all time, arguably a top 10 fighter of all time, arguably the greatest middleweight of all time.
You know, I don't think nobody fought to the level of the caliber that I've been fighting at. You know, I can box southpaw, I can bang southpaw, I can box orthodox, I can bang orthodox.
Yeah, so can Hagler. Once again, go back and watch Floyd's fight against Sean Bay Mitchell. He turned southpaw for a good portion of the fight. You know why a lot of those fighters don't turn southpaw as much as Terence Bud Crawford? That's because they don't have as many issues figuring out their opponent in the orthodox stance as Terence Bud Crawford tends to have early on in his fights. Terence gets tagged a lot in many of his fights when he's orthodox. When he turns southpaw, that's when he gets more offensive minded, trying to get his guy out of there. Floyd is able to figure his opponent out in the orthodox stance. So is Roy Jones. So is Andre Ward. So they don't have to switch back and forth and do those type of things. Nothing against the brother, but when you start speaking like that against the Marvin Haglers and the all-time greats, you got to pump your brakes because you still have a lot to prove.
Normally when a person not fighting his normal stance, he gives up something, you know, and I don't feel like I'm giving up anything when I switch.
Well, that also depends on who you're fighting.
Doesn't seem like you do. And is that so you say basically it sounds to me like the answer is, look, I'll worry about that stuff 50 years from now, right? Like they'll say what they say. Right now, what is it that motivates you for tomorrow night? What do you feel? Like, what's your motivation when you step in that ring tomorrow?
His motivation should be to have a dominating victory so that he can, after the fight, call out Sean Porter or another major fighter, hopefully, maybe a Danny Garcia or whoever, so that he can finally prove that he can get into the ring against top-level competition in the welterweight division and prove and validate that he is a real champion. A lot of guys are not going to like what I'm saying right now. Am I stating that I would pick any of these fighters to beat Terence Crawford? No, I am not. I believe that he has the highest skill sets all around of any fighter in the welterweight division, including Errol Spence. But until he gets into the ring with those guys, no one can say that for sure. You never know what can happen in a real dogfight against a Sean Porter type. You never know what can happen if Terence Bud Crawford were to get tagged by Keith one-time Thurman. We saw Terence Bud Crawford out there on Bambi legs against Gamboa. What might happen against Keith Thurman? What might happen if he gets tagged with a left hook from Danny Garcia? These type of things change fights. Danny Garcia was getting his ass wazazazuped against Amir Khan until he hit him with that left hook. So just because a guy can outbox you does not mean that he's necessarily going to win the fight. That's what I need to see from Terence Bud Crawford. So I'm not necessarily trying to hyper scrutinize the brother. All I'm saying is that before you start to speak about where you're going to rank all time and what your legacy is going to be, make sure that you've accomplished what you're supposed to accomplish before you start to mention names like Marvin Hagler and how much better you are than them.
Just going out there and performing and make sure I get the W. That's the only thing that I'm feeling. That's the only thing I'm worried about. That's the only thing I'm...
John the Beast Mugabe, that was his name. One of the most exciting fights ever. Marvin Hagler against John the Beast Mugabe. That's the cat from Uganda whose name was skipping my mind.
concerned about is making sure that when I leave that ring, I'm leaving with my O.
So
The reason why I remembered it was because after every round, John the Beast Mugabe had a couple of these trainers who kept trying to exhort him. Come on, John. We believe in you, John. When Marvin Hagler started whooping his ass in the later rounds, after every round, John Mugabe's trainers, John, we believe in you. We love you, John. They had some British accent or some Australian accent, some shit like that they had.
sometimes you seem motivated to really hurt your opponent like you didn't like him. Sometimes that's even carried over after the fight. Is this a guy that you're looking to stop? Is a win enough, or are you looking to stop him?
Well, if the knockout comes, it comes. Like I always say, I'm not going in there to look for the knockout just because, you know, I feel like I'm that much better than him. Like I said, I've never been in the ring with him before, but if the knockout comes, everybody know my instincts, I'm going to go for it.
All great boxer punchers say the same thing. Whether it's Muhammad Ali, Ray Leonard, Ray Robinson, Floyd Mayweather before he started to have hand problems, they all say the same thing. If the knockout comes, it'll come.
Thanks, Terence. Good luck tomorrow night. Andre Ward joins me next.
I don't think that Terence is going to need much luck. When you operate on the level of skill that he has, it's basically all about whether or not you're able to execute your game plan. I do believe that he's probably going to make relatively short work of this dude unless this guy is just on a level that none of us were able to comprehend before the fight. We'll see. As of right now, I'm going to predict that Terence Bud Crawford is going to get the stoppage within maybe 5 or 6 rounds. But just getting back to the point of the video, Bud got to chill out. He got to fall back a little bit. When you start getting on camera talking about how much better you are than Marvin Hagler, pump your brakes. So peace.